If the facelift generation of Range Rover Sport is, as these cars are, consistently one of our most in-demand vehicles, you could probably argue even more so here because this one has the even larger, even more powerful, but somehow surprisingly efficient choice of a 4.4-litre SDV8. In other words, the kind of engine and the kind of power which you would expect from a traditional Range Rover, but wrapped in the Sport platform instead. Now, being as it is a 2016 Autobiography dynamic, we'll have to get into that spec in a second because of course the list of goodies on this car is very long indeed. First of all, let's talk about that centerpiece of this car, the engine. 335 horsepower, so performance is definitely never lacking, that's for sure, but it's the low-end torque where this car really does shine. And of course the advantages of a huge amount of torque are multiple. Not only does the engine never have to work as hard to get that kind of pulling power, but because it's so much lower revving as well, you also don't use as much fuel as you would think. In fact, in the case of this exact car, even with that 4.4-litre V8 engine, you can still average as high as 34 miles per gallon, even as high as 37 on the motorway, and that is very impressive. If this were, for example, a 3-litre V6 Range Rover, as popular as they are as well, you probably wouldn't be surprised by those kind of numbers, but for this engine to still have that kind of economy is very impressive. What's also impressive is the fact that these are not far off half the tax price per year of older Range Rovers. If you look further back to the 2000s era, certainly if you have an engine of this kind of size, but in some cases smaller as well, those are nearly £800 a year to tax. This car is $430. And speaking to that point of costs, that is of course the biggest difference. When this car was new in 2016, it would have been not far off 4 times the price of what it is today at under £20,000, still retaining, as you would assume, the option of low deposit financing if you were to spread out that cost, and that is a massive amount of car for the money, even without getting into the rest of its spec. In terms of its condition, its history, its mileage, it's barely kissed 87,000 miles, which for a big powerful diesel is, as we've said before, a drop in the bucket for one of these engines. Crucially though, it has a full service history to back up that mileage, including its original owner's book pack and 2 keys intact as well. Visually speaking, as you can tell, it's finished in Tempest Grey, which is actually quite a rare colour on one of these. It almost has a pearlescent tone to it. It actually looks stunning, especially in person, even more so than in videos. A 2-tone ebony leather interior. In other words, pretty much the exact kind of spec you would want from a Range Rover, visually speaking. But then we get to its interior, and the list of goodies is like Christmas Day on one of these vehicles, even more so being an Autobiography. Heated and cooling seats, adaptive cruise control, that sliding panoramic roof. Incidentally, as far as ownership, its original keeper, and this of course explains the very good level of spec, was Land Rover themselves, and it's only had 2 private keepers ever since. To return to those extras though, it has solar attenuating glass, of course touchscreen display with a 19 speaker Meridian sound system, built-in Bluetooth, multiple 12-volt power points, in-control Wi-Fi, voice-controlled navigation, USB inputs as well, parking sensors as you would assume with reverse camera, xenon headlights with LED day runners on the front, and LED lights on the rear as well, triple zone climate control, power opening and closing tailgate, twin speed high and low ratio transfer box. In other words, if you do ever need to tackle the tough stuff, this car isn't just a show pony, it actually can go off-road as well if you need it to. And as you would assume, being of course a very high-end luxury family car at the end of the day, it does of course also have Isofix anchor points for child seats as well. In other words, when you combine all of these things, that stunning engine, fantastic looks, gorgeous interior spec, massive list of extras as well, and again for under £20,000, particularly these days when used cars and new cars seem to be offering sometimes less than ever in terms of value for money, well, it really is cars like this and many of our popular Jaguars as well that are picking up the baton and certainly running with it in terms of how much car you get for that kind of price. If then you were already on the market for a Range Rover Sport like this, or perhaps are freshly considering one, then of course you could reach out regarding this exact car via the email address shown here on screen, or give us a call on 01749 871 155, or alternately on our mobile number of 07482 267 439.